With global security on the line, I want to bring in MS Now's Priya Sridhar. Retired Navy Rear Admiral John Kirby is an MS Now national security analyst, former White House National Security Communications Advisor, and director of the University of Chicago's Institute of Politics. Tim O'Brien is senior executive editor of Bloomberg Opinion and an MS Now political analyst. Admiral Kirby, I want to start with you because, correct me if I'm wrong, I think in 2003, when President Bush was on the USS Lincoln, interestingly enough, saying mission accomplished, you were still a lieutenant commander in the Navy and active. And I'm curious what you thinking about that moment in 2003, fast forward 23 years and seeing President Trump kind of tweet out something very, very similar.
Yeah, I mean, there's this, of course, there's always political pressure on a commander in chief when they enter a war to end it and to end it favorably and as soon as possible. Obviously, when President Bush made those comments aboard the Lincoln back then, the war wasn't over. It did drag on into great cost of both lives and treasure. It does seem to me that President Trump is facing that same political pressure to wrap this up, to end it, or at least convince people that he's ended it. But obviously, he hasn't. If it was over, then he wouldn't have had the need to bring out the Treasury Secretary last week to say that we were going to have a D-Day list of sanctions. If it was over, the Strait of Hormuz would be flowing at the pre-war levels. It's a trickle of ships getting through there. And if it was over, we wouldn't have a regime in Tehran, which is at least as radical as the one that he decapitated, if not more, with still designs on maintaining an ability to achieve a nuclear weapon. So clearly we're not done with this. I think it's just a wishful, aspirational meme that he posted to try to convince people that he has won, when in fact this war has not only not been won, but I think in many levels you could say it's been lost.
Yeah. Priya, morale in the armed forces, you've been covering this better than probably any other reporter out there. Morale in the armed forces is low. It seems both across the board, whether it's the Army or the Navy or the Air Force, that this war has been exhausting and for them. And I'm curious what they think. Folks that are on one of these ships, one of these aircraft carriers, someone who is in the Middle East waiting for some kind of answer from this president about how the Iran war is going to end, how they take this in, how they take in the president of the United States putting out a message that the mission is accomplished over and over and over again.
Yeah, Eugene, I mean, we've lost track of the number of times we've heard from administration officials, either President Trump or Defense Secretary Hegseth, claiming some sort of version of mission accomplished. And what I'm hearing from family members of service members and service members themselves is there's simply just a lack of trust when they hear things like that, right? They thought that their deployments were going to be ending back in March and April, and instead they kept getting extended and extended with no end in sight, which is what led to much of the reporting I was doing about morale issues and exhaustion. And so specifically in the case of the Lincoln, they didn't even believe that they were actually going home until Admiral Cooper, the CENTCOM commander, went on their ship physically in person and told them that you are in fact going home. So I think there's a little bit more trust when a uniformed person in their chain of command says you specifically are going home. But clearly there is no mission accomplished and this war is not over when we're mobilizing other aircraft carriers like the USS George Washington into the region. And all the former leaders I'm talking to are talking about changing our force posture to put more troops and more assets in the region because we're going to have to indefinitely hold on to this blockade of the Strait of Hormuz.
Priya, you also have new reporting about the sailor from the USS Lincoln who jumped and his wife saying that there was disciplinary action charges happening afterwards. What else can you tell folks?
Yeah, so Eugene, this sailor specifically is basically being accused of violating 2 articles of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. One of them is for malingering, which basically alleges that a service member faked an illness or an injury to get out of work, duty, or service. And the other one basically alleges that a service member left their work duty station without the proper authority. So this sailor in particular is facing a captain's mast. It's a version of a non-judicial judicial punishment where he could basically get only half of his pay for a certain period of time. And I think it raises a lot of serious questions about how the military is handling mental health issues, especially at a time, as I just discussed, where so many service members are saying that they're depressed and exhausted because their deployments keep getting extended and they're facing so many, deteriorating conditions when it comes to a lack of supplies and food.
Priya Sridhar, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go because I know there's a lot of reporting that you have to get to. I appreciate you taking the time. Admiral Kirby, what is your reaction to what you just heard from Priya as someone who has done this work? What is the reaction to the morale that these folks are facing right now and feeling?
Look, lengthy deployments with uncertain endings absolutely affect a crew's morale and certainly contribute to a sense of both mental and physical fatigue when you're on station that long and being whiplashed between combat operations and then holding back while negotiations are going on. I mean, it takes a toll on folks. Ships and sailors get tired over time, and so I'm not surprised that there have been these stories coming from the Lincoln after such a lengthy deployment. Again, with great uncertainty about when it was going to end. I remember on my carrier deployment, this was a long time ago. I won't tell you how long ago, but even on a little 6-month deployment that I went on in support of the Iraqi Kurds, almost from the time we left home base, there were rumors about how we were going to get home early or how we were going to get extended. I mean, so the rumor mill on a ship just gets virulent, and it's hard to hold that back. And those rumors only compound that level of difficulty for sailors.
Tim, on the same day that President Trump posted that mission accomplished meme, I guess, I'm not even sure what to call them anymore on Truth Social, he told Al Jazeera that the war could go on indefinitely. Let me read this to you. Quote, "I have no time schedule, none. I'm not in a hurry. I have no time schedule at all." No one would accuse President Trump of being intellectually consistent on anything. But do you think there's a strategy here? Like, what is going on?
I always think, Eugene, it's a mistake to put strategy and Donald Trump in the same sentence. He doesn't plan. He's not intellectually curious. He doesn't take the advice of advisors who have greater experience or insight than he does. His whole life has been a triumph of style over substance and smoke and mirrors over reality. That, he said he was a self-made man when he was the son of a wealthy father.
Right.
That he was a brilliant student who got into college based on his intellectual bona fides when family connections got him in. That he was a great businessman when in fact he was a serial bankruptcy artist. And now as president, he's saying this war is won when by all accounts it clearly isn't. How is he defining winning? Is the Strait of Hormuz open again? Is oil shipping freely through the Strait of Hormuz? No. Has stability been returned to the Middle East? No. Is there a less threatening regime in Iran? No. Are our sailors and our service people out of harm's way? No. Is this going to haunt us for quite a long time, reputationally, militarily, and diplomatically? Absolutely yes. So the only way that this is defined as a win is in Donald Trump's own mind. And I think he's so used to using propaganda or spin to get over on people. He did it as a celebrity, as a businessman. Unfortunately, now as president of the United States and the most powerful man in the world, the consequences of him constantly selling snake oil is damaging for the U.S. and the rest of the world.
I guess when you don't tell anyone what the mission is, it's easy to say mission accomplished because we're not even sure what we're really supposed to be doing.
Remember, they did say when they went into this war what their goals were. Right. They laid them out, and they haven't achieved any of them.
And those have changed over and over again. I want to play something from the Trump administration when we want them to be focusing on the current war, the war they are focused on, which is the one in Afghanistan. Watch this.
We are conducting a thorough review of what took place in Afghanistan, and I'm going to be honest with you about what that's turning up. The deeper we look, the more there is to look at. We are finding things that we did not expect. Recently, my team recovered highly relevant classified documents, material that should have been disclosed, stashed, and hidden away in safes where they would not be found. And after the team reviewed these documents, it became clear why someone tried to hide them.
Admiral, you were in the administration when the withdrawal took place. What's your reaction to the DOD's decision to pursue an investigation now to kind of trickle out some of these accusations, highly classified things that should have been sent out? How do you think this is going to play out? What do you think they're looking for here?
Well, it's hard to know until we see exactly what they find. Look, any review that can uncover, more lessons learned, I think in the main that's never a bad thing for a military operation of the magnitude of the withdrawal. But the way they've couched this publicly is that it's really more about retribution. It's really more about pointing fingers at the previous administration. I'll just say two things. One, I hope that when they reveal their results, they also make sure that they include the effect of the Doha Agreement that President Trump signed with the Taliban before President Biden took office, because that set the timeline in motion. That set the expectations of the Taliban in terms of how they were going to behave and potentially govern Afghanistan going forward. Number two, on the issue of these documents, again, I don't know what they say. I don't know where they came from. I certainly can't speak to the veracity of the claim. But if you have documents locked in a safe, that's where they're supposed to be. If it's a classified document that you're trying to preserve, you put it in a safe. Otherwise, it gets burned appropriately and gets destroyed. So again, we have to see what these documents actually say. But it sounds to me like that they will probably be being preserved appropriately in a safe, locked in a space where only limited people could have access to them.